Hey guys, welcome back once again to one more lecture and the final one about the Leningrad Dutch defense. I got like too many requests after the last video. How should you play against d4, f5, c4, knight f6, knight c3 if black goes with the most critical continuation by black d6? So previously we had a chance to see what do we do against g6, and you can just check that in the video, the continuation with h4 by white. But what's so critical about this d6 move? Yes, it's really critical one. All the best Dutch players really go for this one from this order of moves, but it's nothing to be afraid of. And here, this lecture should help you really a lot. I remember I was told by my best student ever, that was world junior champion Alexander Ipatov, who's rated almost 2700. Once we discussed this position and he told me about Ivan Sokolov's idea here for white that begins with bishop g5. At that time, he told me, so Maya, here white should be better because you have an easy game with the bishop g5. With the idea of bishop taking an f6. Of course, if they play e6, that you'll go with something, or g6 you'll take on f6, but the critical thing should be what happens if they go with knight bd7. And these are going to be three main moves that we'll cover today. So let's go. After bishop g5, they can go with g6, e6, or the most critical one, flexible knight bd7, because obviously, white is ready to take on f6 and to break the pawn structure. Afterwards, white, of course, since the pawn structure will be broken, white is supposed to exchange pieces. So after bishop g5, they can play g6, e6, and knight bd7. Let's get started with g6. This is probably the worst move of all these lines, and those who play d6, they certainly won't play because of this move. Of course, you'll take on f6, and just take a look and remember the plan I'm about to show you. This is typical Dutch pawn structure that is considered to be kind of weakened, and in a way it could be broken. But how? Look at the plan. You play e3. They of course play bishop g7. You play bishop d3. Castles, and very important move as a part of your plan, queen to f3. Usually, black has to play knight c7, knight c6, and followed by knight e7. What's so strong about this queen on f3 and bishop on d3? We're about to make in some variations, a long castle, in some lines, short castle. But the point of queen on f3 is that it basically controls b7, central square d5, and it wants to support either idea with h3 and g4, or you want to push your pawn from h4 to h4 and h5. So these are your plans in this type of position. So let me just show you. After knight c6, knight g on e2, this knight naturally goes on f4 because it wants to challenge the light squares. Let me show you. a6, for example, they want to do rook b8, b5, and whatever. You just go with h4. That's a very important move with the idea of pushing that pawn to h5 and breaking along the h file. Of course, the black has to stop that. But stopping this actually creates a weakness on g6. And now you just go positionally. Knight f4, which maintains like a good control of the central d5 square and attacks this g6 pawn. After knight e7, queen g3, queen e8, and just when they think like, oh, finally, we're about to, breathe easier because g6 is well defended, boom, remove the defender, attack the c7, they gotta take, and no, you're not gonna take by knight, you're gonna take by pawn, because you'll open the c file and weaken the g6 pawn forever. So after they play, and they have to actually, they're forced to play king h7 to defend on g6, you play rook c1, they gotta go queen f7 to defend, and you go castles. Obviously, you want to go with rook c2, rook fc1, line up your rooks along the c file, go after the pawn on c7, white is positionally winning. Take a look at the idiot on g7. That's how I call usually these bad pieces in opponent's position. So basically, this bishop on g7 really looks weak. Apart from this, there is a possibility with e6. And after like e6, you just have to go with e4. And after f takes e4, we just take by bishop on f6. I'll show you here a game. Of course, you can take by knight, bishop e7, take like this, knight f3, bishop d3, play bishop c2, and go with h4 in order to support jumping with a knight from e4 to g5, or to play queen d3, doing the battery. Those are ideas. But you have a nice game of Simbat Loputian, a legend of Armenian chess, who after d takes e4 took on f6 first, took by knight, he chased his queen away with a tempi, played bishop d3, knight f3 of course, and kicked the knight away from c6 with a d5. After knight b8, he played h4, not castle. He wants to take advantage of not having castle and possibility to go with knight eg5 afterwards. After castles, knight eg5, h6, he d takes e6 followed by bishop h7 would be winning, but actually in the game he went for queen e2, queen e8, and played long castles. Soon afterwards, he finished off his opponents. This game was played in Manila and Philippines like many years ago, 1992, but this was like a very nice game and like a very nice example. Apart from placing that queen on d8, they can put the queen on h6. You just play knight f3, bishop d3, and after castles, you play castle and put the knight back on g3. What's so important about this? First of all, they cannot play bishop g4 followed by queen h5 in some lines. Also, you get like better control of the light squares. And in some variations, you want to play rook e1, going after the pawn on e6 that could be weak. If they go with e5, they're just going to create an isolated pawn. So let's take a look at the most critical lines. After bishop g5, the most critical and the most logical line is knight bd7. You go queen c2, attacking the pawn on g6. They gotta go with g6. Those who play e6, you have a nice plan with the knight h3. If they go h6, put the bishop back on d2, keep the bishop here. And they want to stop knight f4 at all costs, because if the knight comes to f4, we have like a really nice control of the light squares, specifically e6 and g6. So you here play f4, g4, knight f2. You want to play long castle and break in the center with e4. You almost completed your development fully. Well, they have problems with an exposed king on e8. Just because of this, after queen c2, they gotta go with g6. And here, Mamedyarov, quite interestingly, played 3 times this line and lost all 3 games with the white pieces. All my students, I'm talking about the best ones, Ipatov and Eric Hansen, they won their games. Eric even won the game to become a Canadian champion, deciding game. And let me just show you what do I teach them. Straight h4. We want to go with h5. So, and with knight h3, knight f4. Those who do e5 immediately, you take. They take by knight, boom. That's the point of this early h5. They can't take, they can't play h6 because you would take on g6 and they simply fall apart. So e5, a logical move at breaking the center, doesn't seem to be working. I'm about to show the game of Nakamura, who played like this. Bishop g7, Nakamura played long castle. It's very important to play long castle as early as possible so you can prevent e5 d takes ideas. Or knight takes ideas. c6, knight h3. This knight usually goes on f4 with a good control of e6 square, g6 square, and support of the h5 idea. So after knight f8, e3, queen a5, king b1, knight a6, bishop e2, and bishop takes f6 followed by g4. There are like lots of games played in the similar fashion by white players, and white really scored well because you know your plans. After like this, Nakamura captured, played bishop d3, maneuvered these knights nicely, wanted to put one of the knights on f4 to fix the weakness on f5. This guy captured on h4, Nakamura captured on f5, played e4, and got like a full control of the center afterwards. Look at this. This is the game played on Gibraltar 2016 between Nakamura and Anton Giharo. He really had like a good control of the open H and G files. E5 is about to break in the center, and white is just better. After rook hd8, knight f2, he brought this knight on the right place, supporting the e5, but also chasing away the bishop and threatening knight f6. Gihara put the bishop back. Nakamura captured the pawn, brought the knight back to the center to control c4, kicked the queen away, and now went for another pawn. He went chilly when he played e5, won this game because if d takes e5, he would have gone with d6. The game finished like b takes e4, rook h1 threatened the bishop, knight b5, threatened the knight takes a3, followed by rook b7, less tactics. Nakamura played a4, and his opponent resigned. This was a beautiful mix of positional chess and initiative that he was conducting on the king side all the time. Really, really nice one, and I'm enjoying this game a lot. That's why most of these guys, when you play h4, will play h6. And here we have like a very important crossroad to take on f6 or to put the bishop back on d2. This is the critical thing. You should be taking here on f6 in my opinion. Although some guys put the bishop back, including Momajer himself and Ipatov even in one game. So after e5, a3, and you just go with the normal stuff. Long castle, knight h3, and then you want to take on e5 and put your knight from h3 to f4. That's always like your initial idea in these positions. Here I also have quite an interesting game between Ipatov and Gallagher. It lasted like 17 moves, so it deserved to be seen. Gallagher played h5. Somebody said, why to commit yourself that early with such a move? But I definitely think it was like kind of weak move and reaction by black. But on the other hand, white threatens some crazy h5, rook h5, queen f5, or bishop e2, or g4 ideas. So he played h5, knight h3, knight h7 to prevent knight g5, long castles. Ipatov broke in the center immediately with c5. That's quite a typical idea, and I'm going to give my game as the last game of this video. I'm the only one who lost in the system of all my students, but I was completely winning. You'll see why. c5 is a typical break. That's what I did in my game as well. C takes, knight b5, threatening this pawn on d6. After knight b6, captured on e5, played bishop b4, and just like somebody said positionally, black's opening is far from a success. After like queen h4, queen b3 check, defending the bishop, knight f4, Ipatov used some tactics, played a very nice move, rook to d6, and after rook to d6, Joseph Gallagher resigned at this point. Very nice game, very short one, and white seemed to be to have a very easy game. That's why after bishop d2, e5, e3, I'm of opinion that bishop g7 should be done. But you know what? I found one correspondence game between two really good players where the white player went for a castle, long short castle, f3, knight h3, typical plan, bishop e2, took on e5 as well, and broke in the center with g4. I really like this position for white, even though, you know, you have to consider that this was correspondence game, so both guys were using engines. Basically, engine can simply defend himself the most. It's not gonna be an easy task for black players to defend this type of game. I can show you like a couple more moves, knight f2, d7, h5, g5, and f4. Do you know who's going to cold-bloodedly be able to defend this kind of position from black's point of view? I believe it's going to be very difficult. Although Ipatov and Hansen also took on f6 in their games, and after knight f6, long castles. So after like bishop g7, I don't want to, let's just make the things very simple. All you have to do is e3, knight h3, knight f4, bishop e2, king on b1, and break in the center with either f3 and e4 or f3 and g4. After bishop g7, knight h3, my opponent in the game, Grandmaster Cherednichenko from Ukraine, went with the knight on g4. But apart from that, let me just show you the game of Eric Hansen. Hansen played against Michael Barron, who's like a well-known Dutch player in Canada. Hansen went with a3, queen a5, played bishop e2, and this is typical Eric's type of chess. He's slowly building up position, and he, just like a snake, waiting to, bite you very, very, very hard. So after h5, Eric finally goes with his initiative, jump on g6. What did he do? What he's just managed here? Created like line square weaknesses. After Barron went with e6, Eric was supposed to break immediately with e5, but it just shows his character and style of his chess. He played king to b1 because he was slowly preparing himself with the break. Went with f3, broke with e4, and the final of this game was very instructive. Played bishop g4, played d5, and just when this guy thought like, ooh, rook f2, e4, rook b2, and black is about to do a final attack, Eric went with check, played d takes c6, played rook to d7, and when the guy played rook f2, I can give you... By the way, his opponent resigned after rook d7, but he resigned because Hansen prepared rook h6, followed by rook h7, checkmate. For all of you who are wondering who Hansen is, famous Chessbra guy. And after knight h3, instead of this, I found a game between Salem, a very talented player from Arabia, and basically that guy was Eric's main opponent in those world championships. The guys of his age, and lately he made some very nice results, and I like his games and style of chess. He played knight f4 as well. We already learned by now that your main plans are e3, knight h3, knight f4, bishop e2, king b1, and break in the center after f3 with e4 or g4. Salem's opponent played g5, Salem captured, played knight h3, which was kind of provocation, and by the way, he's buying an important time for himself to break in the center with e4. After g4, knight f4, queen e7, played g3, found a good place for this bishop, threatened mate in 1, and after c6, played queen to a3, threatening this one. This was a nice moment of the game, because this pawn on d6 seems to be like really weak. He's about to do final preps for the mating attack. Also, if you play like king b8, you just have knight g6 threatening the queen and the bishop, and pawn on d6 is about to fall, and they're about to fall apart. The guy played knight e4, Salem took on e4, took on a7, and after this came up with this desperado check and knight d5, which won. Actually, this is checkmate, because when they take knight d5, king c6, queen a4, b5, queen a6 would be checkmate. And of all these games and positions, I believe that my opponent reacted in a pretty logical fashion. Cherednichenko played against me knight g4. Makes sense. She's fighting against knight f4, opening up the bishop on g7, and preparing for better break in the center with e5. I played e3 to defend on f2. She played e5, d takes, and she played knight e5. But just like I told you, the main idea in these positions always should be c5. For some reason, I first developed my knight on f4. And let me just show you what happened. Actually, what was like better idea by white in this position? To immediately break with c5. Castles and take on d6 and play knight f4. Afterwards, I played one rapid game in my country. I played against some IM, and here he played king h7. I put the king in safety, played bishop e2, took this on b5. I believe that was like such a like big risk for my opponent to sack this pawn, because d6 is about to fall. I don't care about the a7. Here I said, my knight is hanging. If I take, I'm going to open up his b file and everything else. So I decided to close the bishop. And after this, played h5, and here did this knight e6. His f5 was about to fall while the b2 was defended. Any rook c8 I can oppose with queen b3. It looks a little bit scary, but you know what? You're up a pawn. Another one is about to fall. King is weak there. They have like lots of weaknesses on the light squares. And the most important thing, don't worry, they don't have any counterattack. In my game in European Championship back to 2012, I played knight f4, castles, bishop e2, played king b1, queen to b3. And I remember that after queen a3, rook f6, I spent 45 minutes thinking in this position what to do. I eventually played king a1. I know this move will sound and look crazy to you, but my idea was when I play g4 and when she takes by pawn to be able to play knight e4 when she won't have bishop f5 to pin my king. So just like I told you, 45 minutes thinking for that move, and that's a really nice one. I really played g4. She played b5, I played g5, and when she played rook f7, I played h5. I was +5 already. And in this position, when she played b4, queen b3, she took on h5, you know, like in that desperation. And every single move for white wins except the one that I played. I don't want to show you what I do. I'm embarrassed and ashamed of myself for making such a move. And I lost this game in like next like 10 moves. Every single move in this position wins for white. All things considered, I believe that after bishop g5, knight bd7, queen c2, g6, h4 early, you just get a nice initiative, and all you have to remember, just move your knight to f4, play long castle, play e3, followed by bishop e2, and this, of course, your king should go on b1 in safety, and then depending on, you know, like circumstances and moves by black in the game, you'll decide what should be your plan in the game. Hope you enjoyed this short lecture, and once again, thanks to Noel who ordered this one. Bye-bye.